The Sports Project.
This is a different voice than you're used to hearing. We got substitute teacher vibes. Steve he always wants me to say substitute professor vibes, but I'm not a professor, Jeff. I can't get the professor honor. We've got to leave that for the sports professor.
Correct. Right.
So I'm just a substitute teacher. I'm the guy that puts the TV on. We play a movie and just try to get through things here. But
and those were the best substitute.
Exactly. That's why I like that vibe. I don't want to be a substitute professor. I don't even know what vibe that is. I just want to be a substitute teacher, roll in the old TV on the cart, and then play like an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie from the 80s. So that's what we'll be doing today here, but glad you could join us. The sports professor, Steve Project, is in Arizona. He's doing some scouting for baseball, but in his stead, he wanted to do a baseball show. So we've got some reinforcements in the studio. Jeff's going to want to talk some baseball. He was wanting to talk that on my show, and it got kind of pinched out here the last time he was on there. And then we have Terry Lowery in. He's going to talk to us about the legacy of Bob Sullivan, and we're excited about that, and the whole Fans of Valley Field project here. So we're excited to have him in the studio. For fans of my show, I'm the host of Sports Intel, and then the co-host of Shane Graham's Extra Points on Thursdays. I normally do the thing of the day. So it's National Chocolate Nut Day. And so, Jeff, I'm curious if you have a favorite chocolate nut. I'm not a big fan of combining chocolate and nuts. Like I don't want walnuts in my brownie. Take those out. I just want a brownie.
See, now I am a 100% chocolate brownie guy. But I can do a chocolate-covered nut. I'm boring. Mine is the chocolate-covered peanut. And if I had to do 1A, it's probably the macadamia nut.
That's an interesting second choice. See, mine, the nuts that I like aren't necessarily conducive to being covered in chocolate. Like I like it like a cashew and a pistachio.
They do them.
Although, what's up with this Dubai chocolate thing?
Have you ever
Can we talk
had
about this?
A Dubai bar?
I have not. I saw one when I stopped at the gas station on the way here. And I've seen a lot of this Dubai stuff, and I don't know what's going on with it. I did a lot of traveling for my intelligence career, but I never was in that area of the world. So what's up with this? You've had one, Jeff?
I have had one. There was a local young lady who is a baker. She was making them out of her house, and I had a couple store-bought, but those are the only ones that I would buy. Now, I know if I still inboxed her, she'd probably make me one, but I can't even explain it, but it is the best chocolate bar I have ever had.
I guess it's a good one for chocolate covered nut day. That's really the most popular one. It's not necessarily a chocolate covered nut. It's infused into things, but all of these places are having the Dubai. That's clearly the popular flavor right now. So I if I go get a cupcake, cookie, whatever, pick up things for people at work, it's always the Dubai.
And I
stuff.
think it was a TikTok thing, wasn't it?
It's always a TikTok thing. That's what I've learned. I'm not big on TikTok. I think we technically have TikTok accounts for the other shows, but Rex runs those, so I don't really interact with those.
Guy
but
either,
but what about you, Terry? We got to get you involved. So do you have? Are you somebody that likes a chocolate covered nut? Do you like a chocolate covered peanut like Jeff?
Both.
Oh, all of it. Okay. See, I like a chocolate-covered raisin. I'd go with that maybe, but I'm going to try the Dubai bar. But by the next time you produce my show, Jeff, I'm going to have a Dubai bar.
Okay.
And then we'll talk about it, and then no one will know what we're talking about. But that's typical for the shows that I'm on. So,
right.
But no, we're excited to do this here because I believe that Steve attributed his last show as a little bit of a tribute to Bob Sullivan, but it definitely bears repeating another tribute to Bob, and we're having you, Terry, in for this because definitely a legendary figure in Grand Rapids as a whole, not only on the baseball side, but just a valuable figure to Grand Rapids. So I do want to talk about him and kind of learn from you about him. You knew him better than most, and wanted to talk about his legacy, his long, lengthy, accomplished career. I look at a career like that and I think, oh man, I'm not doing enough with my life here. I got to catch up to Bob. But I'm curious to talk about kind of his legacy and what you guys are doing with the whole Sullivan Field Valley Field project and how you're continuing that legacy.
Yeah, thanks Ryan and Jeff for having me on Sports Project to talk about Bob. Bob was the mentor of our organization, Fans of Valley Field, and we just kind of he handed off the torch to us, and we're running with it. Currently, we are Sullivan Field, which is formerly Valley Field. It was renamed in 1996 in honor of Bob. We are in the deep mud right now. Work's being done at Sullivan Field, and we're hoping this year everything in this phase will be done, and we'll be playing ball again soon.
Okay, so how does the project look as a whole? You're in this current phase, and then what does that look like going forward? Do you guys have a timeline on things, or it just kind of it depends on weather and the way the projects can get completed here?
I think they're going to make a big push to have the grandstands in the field redone this year, and then I know there's a museum coming in a future phase, and a new entrance, the Bissell Archway. Myers is put a lot of money in. They donated a scoreboard, and we will have a walk of fame as you enter the ballpark with
Nice.
plaques and bricks of former great players, and yeah.
That's cool. That'll be neat. I didn't realize. So those are some good sponsors that you're partnering with there. Meyer, Bissell, those are good sponsors to be helping out. What will be the theme of the museum? What will the museum look like? Is it going to be of the field or of kind of the history of baseball in Grand Rapids, or attributed to Bob? What will the museum cover?
Former teams that have played, local Grand Rapids teams, including Union High School. That's always been their home field.
Right.
But the Sullivans, the Black Sox, there's a lot of history there. And then also they had skating there for years, and we're hoping to bring that back.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And there will be some batting cages and pitching mounds going in brand new behind the scoreboard. And a new section with modern fold-down seating, cup holders, really comfortable seating from, I believe, American Seating here in Grand Rapids.
Okay.
So we're hoping that by next spring, Union will be playing baseball.
That will be a great venue for them, because it's a great location for a ballpark. There's all sorts of ballparks around the city, but that's obviously a legendary field ballpark, and I like that it's getting rejuvenated here. That Walk of Fame is going to be cool. That's a cool idea, that you're going to get a lot of people that are just going to want to go down there to see their star on the Walk of Fame there.
It's going to be incredible. It's going to be a good experience for everybody that comes to the ballpark.
That's cool. So I like that they're doing ice skating. I'm not going to be ice skating, Jeff. I'm not going to. No,
I haven't been on ice skates since 1998.
I think it's part of corporate policy. I don't think Scott is allowing us to ice skate. I've had 5 surgeries on this right arm, so that's enough for me. But no, it's nice that they're doing the multi-purpose thing, because obviously here in Michigan we can only play baseball for so many months out of the year. So it's I didn't know that about the skating, that they used to have skating down there at the park. So that'll be nice dual use of that park. That'll really rejuvenate that area around it. I think it'll make it a destination because I think now in recent memory, as it's been renovated and in the process of renovation, people are kind of passing by it. Now it'll be the place that people are going. They're plugging that destination in on their map and saying, "Hey, I'm going down to Sullivan Field."
The jewel of the West Side.
Exactly.
And, Fans of Valley Field also host concerts all summer long at the ballpark.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice. I'm a big concert goer. I've been to probably over 1,000 shows. I know Jeff's got to be a huge concert goer. He's a
Yes.
big record collector and concert goer. So we'll have to go check out a show down there. But yeah, that's great stuff. We're gonna take a quick break, but I want to come back and continue the conversation and talk more about Bob and the field in general here. So stick with us. You're listening to the Sports Project Primetime on Jethro FM. In studio here with Terry Lowery, and want to talk more about Bob here. We covered the field a little bit, but he was a great man, lived a great life here in Grand Rapids, very important to the fabric of Grand Rapids. And so I know you knew him better than most, Terry. So wanted to get some facts and information about the life of Bob Sullivan here.
Sure, thanks. So, for those of you who don't know much about Bob or never heard of Bob, Bob was 96 years old when he passed away last week. He was a local businessman. He was a scout for the Detroit Tigers. He was a veteran of the Marine Corps veteran. He was also a member for 25 years, the Planning Commission and Zoning Board in Grand Rapids. Philanthropist, friend, mentor. Bob was driven.
Is that all? Is that all, Terry? That's all he did in 96 years? He needed about 960 years to do all that. That's amazing. I think you got more things. You got more things on the list?
Yeah, Bob had a sharp eye to spot potential, not only in baseball players, but in business opportunities, in politics, in life. They say a great baseball scout doesn't just look at the player standing in front of him, that they look at the player the person could soon be or become. He didn't want his players or his employees or his friends to be better, say, ball players. He wanted them to be better people. And it's shown. So just a few accolades from Bob. Bob started his carpet and furniture business in 1951. 2 years later, he started the Sullivan's baseball team. Just prior to that, Bob was, as an athlete, he was an athlete, a coach, a mentor, all-city swimmer, nationally ranked Golden Glove boxer, starter on Catholic Central's baseball team. Bob, as a player manager, mostly manager of the Sullivans, won 40 city major titles, 27 United Baseball League crowns, 30 Michigan National Baseball Congress state championships, 6 international titles, and 4 NBC national championships. Of the 600 players that wore a Sullivan's uniform, 249 signed professional baseball contracts, and over 76 made it to the major leagues, with 4 players becoming managers shortly after. Locally, Bob, besides being a scout, he owned a pro football team, the Shamrocks, later the Blazers, and a pro basketball team, the Tackers. Bob was inducted into the Grand Rapids Sports Hall of Fame, the Michigan Golden Gloves Hall of Fame, the Netherlands Sports Hall of Fame, the Michigan Sports Hall of Fame. He was awarded the Gerald R. Ford Award and inducted into the Michigan Irish Hall of Fame.
That's amazing. I didn't know it until I researched for this interview. I didn't know about the football and the basketball. I knew about the extensive baseball experience because he's a legendary scout. He's responsible for a lot of what the Tigers have done in getting a lot of the players from Grand Rapids to there and locating a lot of players for them, as you mentioned, Terry. But I didn't know because he was ostensibly the first one to bring basketball and professional basketball and football to Grand Rapids, right? I mean,
That's correct.
I grew up with like the hoops and stuff. They were long after Bob bringing those franchises that you mentioned. I didn't even know that before the research for this interview here.
Yeah, I probably 4 or 5 years ago, I finally, when I got to meet Bob, he would tell me these stories. And speaking of the basketball team, Bob and a young Dave Rosema, who was Bob was going to accompany him down to Dave's first spring training in Florida. They stopped down in Indiana to watch Bob's Tackers basketball team play a game, and then they were going to fly down to Lakeland, and they rushed to beat a storm that was coming through. And they got up in the air. They weren't up there very long, and they had engine trouble and actually had to do an emergency landing at a military base. But they the next day they got a car and they got Dave Rosema to spring training.
I'm just going to assume that Bob landed the plane too, because I mean, what hasn't he
That
done?
wouldn't be
Jeff?
a surprise, would
Yeah,
it? I mean,
yeah, this is just what I imagine. It's like the most interesting man in the world for those ads. That's what I'm thinking with Bob. I mean, what couldn't he do? I mean, the service time with the military, and then all of this great career stuff that he did, and that's, I think it's important to talk about this stuff because there's certain names that get associated with Grand Rapids as far as what they've done from a business standpoint, what they've contributed to the town. But I think this is one that we have to make sure to not leave out, as far as the part of the fabric of Grand Rapids with what he did from a business standpoint and also the sports standpoint here, because his legacy lives on. It'll live on with the field, and it lives on with all of those tentacles that he had out there with all these young players and not so young players. I mean, one of the players that played for the Sullivans was Mickey Stanley back in who was on the Tigers for the 68 World Series team. So that's how long that these teams have been around. And so he's got a lot of feelers out there and a lot of influence in the Michigan sports market as a whole, especially on the west side. So definitely worth talking about and continuing his legacy as you guys are doing with the field here.
So Bob grew up in the Great Depression. He knew what it meant to struggle, what it meant to work hard. Then he joined the Marine Corps, and I think they really got him into shape. And he was just, his mindset was nothing's going to stop me, nothing's going to get in my way. And before we end the segment, I just wanted to name some of the players that came through Bob's program.
Yeah, that's great.
Kurt Gibson, Al Kaline, Willie Horton, Jim Catt, Mickey Stanley, Phil Regan, Dave Rosema, Bill Bates, John Vanderwall, Paul Ossenmacher, Bill Landrum, Rob Ellis, all played substantial time in the pros. And then locally, Jesse Young, Gary Reed, Mike Eddington, coach at City College, Bob Goodart, Mike Couples, Mike Daybreak, Tom Ainsworth, Ronnie Rays, Curtis Morgan, Terry Lynch, Dick Clunder, Buzz Weinbeek, Rick and Ed Moore. Our prayers to all of the former players, Bob's two daughters and his granddaughter, and all his cousins or nieces and nephews. Our condolences.
Definitely. And at least his legacy will live on, because I think some people would kind of look at things and think, okay, well, I'm here for kind of a limited amount of time in the grand scheme of things, but he made the most of his time here, and the impact will be felt for a while. When you started out that list of the major league players, Jeff, I didn't know if he was listing major league ball players or just the statues at Comerica Park here,
right?
Because those are some of the better Tigers that we've had.
Absolutely,
and that's impressive. Obviously, with K-Line and all those players there, Gibby. So yeah, his legacy will certainly live on. I think you got a little bit more for us.
Yeah,
here, Terry.
I just wanted to end with this, and it's a famous quote often shared in scouting. The world may be different because I was important in the life of a young athlete. Looking around Grand Rapids, we can see that the world is indeed different because of Bob Sullivan. He found the best in us. He invested in us and loved us. Bob, thank you for always seeing our potential. We'll keep playing the game the way you taught us, with heart, with hustle, and always with an eye on the next generation. Rest in peace, my friend.
It's a perfect way to summarize things. Hopefully he does rest in peace, and his legacy will never be put to rest. It will continue on and in the field and in all these players and in the players that they also are able to mentor, because a lot of the players that you mentioned, Terry, are older players. Some of them are past themselves, Al Kaline and some of them. But think of how many people Al Kaline mentored in his career. He was a longtime coach after he was a player, and so the legacy lives on through all of that. So we're happy to have you here and have you join us for this. I also want to make sure, I do have some things in the notes for the end of the show, but want to make sure to direct people if they want to support Valley Field, Sullivan Field. Where do we direct them to? Is there a website that they can go to?
fansofvalleyfield.com.org.
I think it's .org. Yeah.
And on Facebook, Fans of Valley Field.
Awesome.
Perfect. Yeah, be sure to check them out. It's a great project, and I'm excited about it. I'm going to be hanging out there, certainly for the concerts, not for the ice skating, but other people will do that. I'm not going to go down there. Scott Pasteur in the Ivory Tower will not let me go down there, but definitely for the baseball and the concerts here. But it'll be a destination location for a lot of folks, like you said, Pearl of the West Side. I live on the West Side. I love the West Side of town, so I'm glad we're getting another destination there. And thanks for joining us, Terry. Appreciate you coming in and educating us on Bob's great career and legacy and the Valley Field project here.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Definitely. Yeah, we'll have you back here again soon. And I know Steve is always pushing the Valley Field stuff. And I went to the Valley Field fundraiser where Dan Dickerson spoke as well. So always doing great stuff for the city. But appreciate you joining us. We're going to stick with the baseball theme. We're going to do that for most of the episode, unless Jeff and I wander off at the end of the show. But it'll be mostly baseball. So next we're going to have Joe Rampe of the Tigers Intelligence Report, and we'll start talking some Major League Baseball, which Jeff is chomping at the bit for. So stick with us. You're listening to the Sports Project Primetime on Jethro FM. We're going to get some intel here, themed to my Sports Intel show on Mondays. We got a couple guys that I talk with about baseball on that show that do a great job covering baseball for us, and we're just kicking off coverage. So we got Joe Rampe, formerly of the Tigers Minor League Report, but now of the Tigers Intelligence Report, which, Joe, with my intelligence background, I got to have somebody on that if they're from an outfit like the Tigers Intelligence Report. So happy to have you on and happy to talk some baseball, because Jeff is very happy, my producer, to talk some baseball too. So you'll have two of us gnawing your ear off. But welcome to the show, Joe.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Definitely. Yeah, we're glad you can come on and talk some baseball. We've got a lot of baseball to talk about. There's a lot of different places that we could start, because this is going to be an interesting year. They now have the weight of some expectations here for the Tigers. I think people were a little disappointed in how last season ended. I really wasn't in that camp, I have to say. I thought they had a pretty good year. I know that they kind of scuffled a little bit down the stretch, but they started out free agency quite slow, and then they kind of ramped up as things went on. They've added some veteran pitching, but I think people are clamoring for a bat here. But Joe, I was reading the Tigers Intelligence Report that you and Lynn Henning do, and it's great stuff on there. And I want to have Lynn on the show at some point in time too, as well as having you back on my show. But you did some good in-depth pieces about some of the arms, because that's where the focus has been here in the season so far. I think they're trying to make sure that they don't have a situation like last year, where it did feel like they leaned a little too heavily on certain players, where it was like, okay, Tommy Kahnle is okay as part of the bullpen, but they used them a little bit too much, overextended them, and then that caused some trouble where he wasn't as valuable down the stretch. Same with some of the other arms. It just seemed like they were a little bit worn out. Holton, Vest held up all right, but they reinforced the bullpen, and they reinforced the starting rotation, knowing that Olsen would likely be out now for the year with his surgery. So, but you covered a couple pieces that I feel like we haven't talked about a lot, because a lot of the attention went to Verlander once he got signed. Of course, there's going to be a ton of attention on Skubal going through the arbitration thing and him being the ace. But you wrote a couple great pieces on Valdez and Melton, who are two key arms that I feel like could factor in here. Obviously, Valdez is going to be at the top end of the rotation, and now you've made Melton a lot more flexible in what he can do, because you've kind of filled in some of those spots. So now you can kind of use Melton where he's at his most advantageous.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was pretty sad to see that it sounds like Melton's already dealing with some right arm soreness. And so that's why, I think some people were kind of wondering, as soon as when Verlander and Valdez signed on the same day, it was kind of like, well, what about Reese Olson? What about Troy Melton? And I think that we're seeing why teams do load up on starting pitching, because you just never know. I think that the Tigers used something like 10 to 13 starting pitchers last year. You just never know. And spring training, to me, is a dangerous time for pitchers as well, because they're ramping up after the off season. So that's part of why I liked the Valdez signing so much, is that he's proven that he's durable and he can eat a lot of innings and put up good results while eating those innings. And you touched on the bullpen getting worn down. I think between 2024 and 2025, the Tigers might have the most relief innings pitched out of any team. And Will Vest and Tyler Holton have been used a lot. I think they're both right around the top 10 over the last 2 years. So bringing Valdez aboard should help out a lot there. And Justin Verlander was pretty reliable the second half of last year too. And I think he can. I would pencil him in for somewhere around 150 innings as well. And then with Valdez, you're hoping for something closer to 200. But I liked bringing those two in. It did I felt like it kind of salvaged the off season for some fans. But you touched on it earlier too. I think that a lot of people were hoping for a bat. But to me, I think that there's a lot of upside with the offense, and just, kind of hope that the pitching staff can stay healthy and you get some of the younger guys take a leap this year.
I agree, and I didn't I hadn't heard about the Melton soreness, although it is in the in spring training, so hopefully that's not too serious. But I do like that this year there doesn't have to be an overreaction to, okay, well, we're missing this one arm, because it does feel like last year, I mean, Joe was talking about it, Jeff, but yeah, it just felt like we saw those same bullpen arms, and I was talking about it all the time on the show. We saw, I like Holton. I think he's very valuable to this team and to the bullpen and as kind of a flex starter. But you look at his innings pitched and you're thinking, I know he's not a starter, but to be used on that many days and in the ways that he was, I think he was a little overextended, and he did what he could, but the human body only has so much to give.
Yeah, and Canely was a nice story in the beginning, but once you saw him a few times without having that 95, 96 mile an hour fastball, forget it. He got hit hard late in the year, and then, yeah. Joe, how serious is the Melton injury? I listened to A.J. Hinch's interview, and he said we're going to take it really, really, really slow bringing him back. Is this a concern that could last into May or June, or is it just something they're just going to work him back in so he can, be there at the start of the season?
Yeah, I think that we'll probably find out a little bit more. The Tigers do those injury reports every once in a while, and it sounds like they're still kind of trying to get it figured out. But anytime that they say right arm soreness and we have to shut this guy down, it's concerning to me. The reports were trickling out about Olsen kind of beforehand. I think Evan Petzold had it that he wouldn't be ready for opening day, and then all of a sudden he was out for the season. And I'm not saying that Melton's situation is anything like that, The only thing that I've seen is what some of the beat writers have put out there about that. It's just general arm soreness, and that's I think that could just as easily be just a normal spring training thing. Guys are ramping up, so I don't think it's anything unusual, but it's certainly concerning anytime that you have to shut someone down.
Exactly. And I mean, especially in baseball, you look at these guys and you think, okay, well, they're young guys. Well, the young guys are the ones that are getting a lot of the Tommy John, that's what he has, but the Tommy John surgeries, a lot of the wearing down of the arm. There's just so much torque and pressure on these guys' arms. So hopefully he'll be able to make it through here and contribute, because I do think he can be a valuable arm. But the good news is that we do have a lot of reinforcements this year. It does feel like if one guy goes down, it's not going to be as much pressure on another guy, whether it's with the starting rotation, with the middle relief, or with the back end, which is really where I thought they had to improve, because they were putting a lot of pressure on Holton. They were using Canely, as Jeff said. I liked Canely. I think I was a Canely sympathist for most of the year, but he doesn't really have a large variety of pitches, as we know, and the velocity is not there, and people kind of figured him out. Plus, even in the early going, the advanced statistics were not great on him, because he was just getting hard hit balls, but they were going right to people, so you kind of knew that was a domino waiting to fall. But now they've reinforced things, and now it feels like, because really I look at AJ Hinch as he's a guy that you just want to give him as many chess pieces as you can, because he's playing 3D, 4D. He might even be playing 5D chess. I don't even know what that is, but he might be playing it. I'm not smart enough to understand it, but you've got to give him the pieces, and now he's got some back end high leverage relievers where I think they could keep everybody, hopefully health pending, healthy and fresh for the year, when you just go situationally at the end and you say, okay, is this more of a Vest situation? Is this a Jansen situation? Is this a Finnegan situation? And you've got some high leverage guys along with some innings eaters on the front side, and some guys that maybe you stretched too far, a Montero, a Melton, guys that didn't necessarily need to start or weren't initially pegged to start, but were moved into starters roles or too heavy of roles. Now you've got all those guys in the middle, Holton, the rest of those guys, and I feel like they've right-sized the pitching staff as a whole.
Yeah, I agree. And there was right at the beginning of the offseason, there's a lot of attention on Flaherty and Torres coming back, and rightfully so. And I'm glad to have those guys back. You could argue about their salaries maybe being a little bit higher than what they would have gotten on multi-year deals. But to me, if you would have told every major league team we will sign, if Torres and Flaherty would have been available for a 1-year deal, I think that their salaries would have been right where they are. But right after that happened, they signed Drew Anderson, who had been pitching in the KBO. And if you look at his MLB resume, it's not great. But he made some major changes last year over in the KBO. His velocity has crept up, and he added a kick change that got a lot of whiffs last year. I think it was up over 50%, a 50% whiff rate. And he looked pretty good in that first spring training game. And you touched on Kiter Montero. I think that his stuff would tick up in short stints in the bullpen. So I actually really like the composition of the Tigers bullpen. I think that if Drew Anderson is in the bullpen, there should be pretty much 6 spots locked up right now between Jansen, Finnegan, Vest, Holton, Herter, and Anderson. But I like the flexibility of having 2 spots available for guys that you can either, option guys out if the bullpen needs a fresh arm. You have 2 spots that you can send guys out, or if a team's coming in with a lot of lefties, you could call up two lefties for that series. The Tigers kind of did that last year, and I think that they're kind of playing it series by series, and I think that they are really well equipped to do that this year too.
I agree, and it did seem like the opposite at times last year, where it was like, regardless of the scenario, it was like, oh, okay, well, here's Canely. We don't know what else to do. Here's Canely. Let's
Absolutely.
just throw him out there. And I'm really ragging on Canely. I actually did like him last year as far as the story went, and I thought he was off to a good start. But he was just overused. He was overutilized, and now they'll be able to avoid that. You were nodding your head, Jeff. I've heard this pitcher mentioned for kind of an underrated acquisition. This is a name I'm hearing a lot that Joe was talking about. This guy that came over from the KBO. That's an interesting one because, you know, we don't know what we're going to get out of a guy like that, but it does seem like a lot of people are high on him as opposed to kind of his level of experience, but what they're seeing out of him, the potential. This is a guy that people are interested in. I think this might be our new Joe. You've been part of this, so I have a streak going on Sports Intel. Whenever we do a baseball interview, we cannot. I think we're contractually obligated to bring up Hyu Lee. We every time somebody has brought him up, and it even happened. I interviewed Brandon Day on Monday, and he still snuck Hyu Lee on. It was like at minute like 35. He was like right at the end, and I said, "Phew, okay, now Hyu Lee's people won't come and get us or whatever." But yeah. I'm wondering if Anderson will be that guy this year, because I feel like I'm hearing his name a lot.
Yeah, and man, Brandon's doing some great work at Bless You Boys. His prospect write-ups have been amazing. I don't know how he finds the time. He does a great job with Bless You Boys. But yeah, I remember last spring training how Hyu Lee was. He was getting a lot of press, and for good reason. He's very talented. Some of his numbers weren't great last year at AAA, but some of his advanced metrics were better than what they showed on the surface. So, and he was also extremely young for the league too. So, I think that I could see him bouncing back this year. And now that our old friend Andy Ibanez is gone, that role, it's Jahmai Jones deserves the first crack at it. But guys like Hyu Lee and Max Anderson give the Tigers some flexibility. If someone goes down, they can bring them up, play second or third. So yeah, and I agree. I think that Drew Anderson will be a story this spring, and it seems like he might be first in line if one of the top 5 rotation guys has to unfortunately miss any time. I feel like Anderson might be the first. It would be between him and Kiter Montero most likely as the first guy to fill in now that Melton's. It seems like he might not be ready for opening day, if that's the case.
And that still does feel like better reinforcements than what they had before, too. So it'll be interesting to see those guys. I do want to talk more about the bats here and some of the young ones, the young bats, because as we mentioned before, they weren't too aggressive in free agency regarding the offense. So I'm thinking that they are planning on some reinforcements from the minor league level, including a couple of the names you mentioned. So we'll come back with Joe Rampe of the Tigers Intelligence Report. Stick with us. You're listening to the Sports Project Primetime on Jethro FM. We're doing our baseball research here with Joe Rampe of the Tigers Intelligence Report, having a good conversation with him about kind of what to expect here from the Tigers and baseball as a whole. We were talking a little bit in the break, Jeff and I were, about the whole bat thing, because he was getting a little irritated with the mindset of, okay, clamoring for a bat, we got to get a bat. I look at this as a vote of confidence for what they have in the minor leagues, because one of the issues that I've raised with some of you guys, some of the pundits on my show, is it does feel like, and you used to cover the minor leagues pretty much extensively, it looks like they're confident in what they have up and what they have able to come up to the big leagues. And I do think there's a little bit of a logjam at the minor league level where they've got so much talent down there. They're brimming with talent. Every level played well into the playoffs. The Whitecaps had a historic season. Were nominated Team of the Year in their league. Erie played super well. We had Greg Gagnon often talking about that. Toledo, every level, they had a ton of talent. But at some point, there's almost like a pinch point in an organization where if you don't have headroom, it's the same if you work for a business or something like that. If you don't have headroom, then how are you going to progress? How are you going to advance your career? And so you can't necessarily acquire all of these bats at the major league level, because then you're starting to block guys that are making their way there. The Kevin McGonigal's, the Max Clarks, the guys that are coming, and you want to give them a chance. Those are kind of the high-end prospects, along with Briseño and some others. But the guys you mentioned, Joe, guys like Hyu Lee, Max Anderson, those are guys that I feel like probably will deserve a shot, and you've got to have some room for them. I'm not advocating, okay, don't sign Bregman if you've got a good chance and it's a salary level that you see fit for him and you feel like he's going to be a good fit, especially since he used to play for Hinch. But I think this is a vote of confidence in the young guys, saying, hey, we want to see what we've got out of these guys, and no, they may not be up right away, but they're coming.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, the Scott Harris inherited a lot of the roster, but now we're starting to see some of his draft picks reach the point where they can start to become major leaguers. And I don't blame him for having confidence that these guys are going to perform well. And it's not just blind confidence either. You know, I check out on FanGraphs, the Zips projections every year that Dan Zimborski, he created the Zips projection system. And to me, it does a pretty good job of setting like a baseline expectation. And according to him, according to his projection system, Max Clark and Kevin McGonigal would be two of the top 5 or 6 hitters on the Tigers this year by WAR. So I think I liked the idea of not necessarily clogging up the lineup with some sort of like mid-tier free agent, when there are a lot of guys on the team that are either on the way, or guys like Parker Meadows and Matt Vierling who should be coming back stronger than what they were last year. And your point about Alex Bregman, to me, that's kind of the perfect example of the position that the Tigers were in this offseason, is that Bregman is most likely he is projected for somewhere around like 3 WAR this year, and he's an extremely solid player. But do you want to pay Alex Bregman $35 million a year for that 3 WAR, or do you bet on Colt Keith, who is most likely going to be the full-time third baseman, putting up numbers close to what Bregman can bring for 1/7 of the cost? And I think that's where the Tigers were in this offseason, is that they had so much depth and so many young guys that are either proven or like McGonigal and Clark have shown in the minors that they could hit the ground running when they do come up. I just think it was hard to upgrade the Tigers' offense this winter, because you're paying so much for a marginal upgrade. That, to me, it made more sense to put those funds into the pitching staff.
Jeff's nodding his head at this one. I'm in agreement on this as well, because I do think that you've got to do some math on some of these things, because they do have a young core here with the Tigers that's progressing very nicely, including some of these draft picks that we're talking about. So you're going to need some funds to be able to sign those guys, and I think they're planning accordingly, knowing that there are going to be some bigger contracts down the pike. Yes, it always comes down to Skubal, but he's not the only one that they're going to have to consider re-signing as things progress here. So I know this has been something Jeff's been in agreement on, but I think he's got something for you here, Joe.
Yeah, and we can say confidently now that Bregman did not want to come to Detroit, right?
Yep,
I mean,
I'd agree.
I think he won a championship in Houston. To me, it was all about his numbers. He could hit home runs in Boston over the Green Monster, and now it's no coincidence he's in Chicago playing with the Cubs in that field where that ball sails out of there. You can't tell me for 1 minute that he did not have any. He played for A.J. Hinch, and I'm like, that has nothing to do with it. Bregman wants money, and he wants his numbers, and that's about it.
And like you said, I don't know if it was really against the Tigers. It was against Comerica Park.
Exactly.
That was specifically playing 81 games in that stadium. That was probably a no, don't you think, Joe?
I agree 100%. And, one thing about Bregman is it does sound like when you talk about his contract, it's not just his offense, it's his defense. And he's pretty well respected, it sounds like, as a leader. And those things definitely have multiplying effects on the rest of the team. But I think that the Tigers have some good clubhouse guys too. That one to me, I think that Colt Keith is in for a breakout season. He made a lot of strides last year, and the one area that he didn't make a ton of strides in is in hitting home runs. But he was a big-time power hitter in the minor leagues. And I remember when Colt Keith got drafted, his first year down in Low A, he hit less than five home runs. And I remember reading an interview with him, and he was basically talking about, I just want to become a hitter first, and then I'll grow into my power, but I need to figure out how to hit first. And I think that he's going through that a little bit at the major league level too. He's trying to figure out how can I be a good hitter first, and then I'll grow into my power as I go. And I think that that's a good idea, and I think that he's in for a big year.
I agree. I think he's somebody that's kind of gotten forgotten about here, lost in the shuffle a little bit, but it hits on some of the things that we're talking about. He was a young guy that they developed and is on a team-friendly deal, what I view as a team-friendly deal. They signed him early, and I think he can grow to beyond that contract. He just needs a little bit more time, a little bit more seasoning, and to see more at the major league level. And he's put it together in stretches, and he just needs to have some more consistency here. So I want to talk more about the bats. We're going to take another quick break and then come back with Joe Rampe of the Tigers Intelligence Report. Stick with us. You're listening to the Sports Project Primetime on Jethro FM.
From the GarbarinoRoofs.com studios.
Country with a twist. Jethro FM. 1530 AM. WYGR Wyoming Grand Rapids. 94.9 FM Grand Rapids. 99.5 FM Lowell. And Jethro South. 980 AM WAKV Otsego Plainwell. 98.9 FM Otsego. And 105.1 FM Kalamazoo. Available worldwide at jethro.fm.
The first one being Joe Rampe of the Tigers Intelligence Report, having a good conversation and season preview here. Needed to get one more segment so we can talk about some of those bats a little bit more. I think you brought up a great point, Joe, about Colt Keith. I'm curious to see what else happens with the improvement of the existing bats too, because we talked a little bit about the minor league guys possibly coming up and making an impact by the end of the year. But I also think there's room for improvement even in some of the better players. Riley Green is looking at the mechanics of his swing. Torkelson had a great start to the year, but the splits in general for the team were not great as far as first half, second half for a lot of the players. So hopefully they can find some consistency. But I think the big thing on the hitting side as well is also not oversaturating any of the bats, getting them consistent looks, and also mixing in some rest and being able to have confidence in some of those guys that are the next man up. I felt like they were chasing for most of the year last year, but then they discovered guys like Jahmai Jones and some other guys that did fill in and do pretty well. But with the reinforcements coming in the minor leagues and hopefully a healthy Vierling, Meadows, some of those guys that you mentioned, Joe, I think those things will help the bats and show the fans maybe they didn't need a lot more help than what's actually already on the roster.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes me think of if you're counting on improvement or a player taking a leap, would you think of that more as like a mid-tier free agent that you're hoping has a career year, or more so that these guys on the Tigers that are 24 to 27 years old that are just entering their prime? I think that there's a lot of Tigers performed above expectations last year, and I think that gave some fans some concern about this year, because it's like, well, the water kind of found its level last year. I was just looking it up earlier, and I think through July 8th, when the Tigers were 25 games over 500, they had scored the sixth most runs in baseball. And from July 9th on, I think that they were down at 23rd. And so people will rightfully point to that and say, that some of those guys came crashing back down to earth. But the team is made up of a lot of guys that are just entering their prime, and I think that it's more likely that several guys take a step up this year than it is that they deal with a lot of the regression that people are worried about.
I agree. I do think that Jeff and I talk about this a decent amount, because we talk about kind of the sports radio landscape and how we do it a little differently here on these shows. But I don't think people take full account of what actually is going on, like a team age and major league time and things like that. These are guys, sure, okay, I get that Torkelson had high expectations when he came to the big leagues. He's still a fairly young player that could have some development. Same with Riley Green, who a lot of people would identify as kind of a five-tool player at this point. He is a great player. He's a budding superstar, but he has room for improvement. That's not a criticism. That's more hopeful than anything, that he can maybe take the next step up. But Jeff and I like to be a little bit more positive on these shows than some of our friends on the other shows, don't we, Jeff?
Yeah, we do. And Joe, I was going to ask you, how much pressure is on Parker Meadows to get off to a good start, knowing that to me, when he's not confident, I mean, it's prominent. You can see it from, I mean, your eyes don't lie when he's not swinging the bat with confidence. How much concern and how much pressure is on Parker Meadows to get off to a fast start, knowing we've got guys on his heels in Toledo?
Yeah, his year last year, I kind of give him a pass, because he had to battle through so many injuries, and it's hard enough to hit a baseball. But just imagine having to go through all the he missed all of spring training. He was never able to get into a groove. So my hope with Parker Meadows is his career batting line is something like a 95 WRC plus, which means it's about 5% below league average. And if he can hit at that level with his defense and his base running, he will be like a 3-WAR player next year. But his situation reminds me of a lot of major leaguer situations, in that there's always someone coming for your spot. And he doesn't have to look far to see that Max Clark is right here, and if it's not Max Clark, it could be Matt Vierling. It could be Wenzel Perez. So the Tigers are 2 to 3 guys deep at most positions. So I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on guys, but I think that's a good thing. And I have high hopes for Meadows this year. And just imagine an outfield with Parker Meadows in center and Max Clark in one of the corners, how good they'd be defensively. So even if Max does make his way up to Detroit this year, I think that there's still room for both him and Parker Meadows. But yeah, I'm sure that Parker Meadows is feeling a little bit of pressure this year, not only because of last year, but because Max Clark is on his way.
Jeff and I are having a good conversation here with Joe Rampe of the Tigers Intelligence Report. I think that's a good point, Joe, because that was one of the weaknesses at the beginning of the year last year. I remember it was a bit of a scramble to kind of put together that outfield with some of the injuries, including 2 Meadows, as you mentioned. So I think having a little bit more as far as reinforcements go, obviously that's going to be better. I know Brandon brought up an interesting point that I hadn't thought of before. He was also talking about kind of the longer levers of Meadows, and obviously that's great for him kind of galloping in that open center field, but that also could mean that maybe there's more injuries on the horizon. Not that it was a prediction, but Clark's built a little differently than Meadows is.
Yeah, and those long levers, that's a great point about him getting into a rhythm too. You know, he got into a huge rhythm in the second half of 2024, and he was probably the Tigers' best player. And so you just have to hope that he can get into a better rhythm this year, because he's as talented as any player on the roster. But that was a great point by Brandon. You know, some guys they're so athletic that it reminds me a little bit of Byron Buxton with the Twins. You know, it's like there's sometimes a trade-off to being that athletic, and it can happen with injuries. We've seen it with Mike Trout. But I've got high hopes for Meadows this year, and let's just hope that the injury bug doesn't hit.
I'm not making any predictions here, but I thought that was a good note. And then maybe that does open the door for somebody like Clark, or trying to see what the composition, the outfield looks like. But I think there's a lot of possibilities this year. And when you kind of do go through the scenarios of, okay, what if this person gets hurt, or what can we see from this place? I think there are a lot of places where people can fill in and then make like a McKinstry, Baez, guys that we haven't talked about much in this interview so far, go more into those utility roles where they're more valuable, because I know Baez playing center field was pretty novel last year, and it worked pretty well, Jeff.
Very fun at times.
But
Yes.
It's probably better as a short-term thing. That's kind of my main theme for this interview so far, is a lot of the things that worked in the short term, let's keep them in the short term. Let's keep Tommy Kahnle in the short term. Let's keep Baez maybe not doing a ton of reps in center field, but knowing that that's an option depending on what kind of lineup you want to put out there. But I think those chess pieces for Hinch are there and are coming, and so then he can manipulate them how he sees fit, Joe, and that could lead to some good things here for the season.
Totally agree.
But great stuff, Joe. We really appreciate you joining the show. I wanted to make sure to direct people to this new outfit that you guys have going here with Lynn, because it's right up my alley, especially on the sports intel side. Yeah,
no, it's been great. It was funny that he announced it. It just so happened that a Tiger sports writing legend announced his new venture on the same day that Verlander came back. So that was fitting. But yeah, it's on Substack, and it's Tigers Intelligence Report. Lynn is incredible to me. He's kind of set the standard of what of Tiger sports writing over the years. So it's an honor to be doing it with him. And yeah, please check us out at Tigers Intelligence Report on Substack.
Definitely check them out. It's a lot of great stuff, very information heavy in the best possible way, but well written and well conveyed. And we'll be trying to get Joe and Lynn on Sports Intel and on the station as a whole. So we appreciate you joining us, Joe, and we'll look forward to talking to you again soon.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, Joe. Take care.
You too.
Thanks to Joe Rampe. Appreciate him joining us. A good kickoff to the Tigers side of the baseball conversation. We're going to continue this here because Jeff hasn't gotten enough of the Tigers talk.
I don't even know if I'm going to sleep tonight. I mean, this is great.
We're going to continue here with Rogelio Castillo. That would be Joe's former boss over at Tigers Minor League Report. Anybody that follows my show knows I have those guys on a lot. Again, very similar, a lot of information and a minor league focus, but a lot of these guys are in spring training, and so we'll kind of look ahead to the future and at the present now that they're in spring training here. So stick with us. You're listening to the Sports Project Primetime on Jethro FM. We're bringing on some big time guests to help balance that out, and this is one of my favorites from my show. I've had him coming on here for the last couple years. He runs the Tigers Minor League Report. If you're not following it, you should. It's a peek into the future. We started talking to these guys when the Tigers weren't so good, and then all of a sudden that flipped on all of us in the best possible way, and they went on that run a couple years ago. But we were looking into the future with these guys, and now the future kind of is now. And so not only do they know a lot of the young prospects that have made it to the major leagues because they've been covering them, they also have a glimpse into what we might see. So that's why I wanted to bring Rogelio Castillo of the Tigers Minor League Report on the show and talk some baseball. You have to be chomping at the bit here, Raj. It's time, right? You've been waiting through this whole off season. Now we get to talk some baseball. I'm sure you didn't stop in the off season though.
Should be there.
Yep.
Oh, are you there, Raj?
Yeah, you guys sound really far away though.
Oh, we sound far away. Okay, Jeff will work on that here on the board because I am not far away and I am not quiet. So we are not. There must be a technical issue, maybe with the connection or with the board. Can you hear me a little bit better now?
A little bit better, yeah, a little bit.
Okay, I'll be bringing my best radio voice here for you, Raj. If I talk any louder, I'll be yelling, and Jeff will, Jeff's ears will go out. But no, you got to be excited to be talking about this season here because this is something you wait for all year in the off season, and now we're finally getting going. But like I said in the initial question, you probably didn't stop talking baseball in the off season.
No, I did not, and now I hear you better. Thank you. No, it's been really exciting to see the prospects come in handy and just all the nostalgia all at once. So it's a combination of everything. It's overwhelming. I'm not going to lie, but it's in a very good way.
Exactly. And I want to talk about some of those prospects. That's why we wanted to get you on the show, because it's fun to see the development here of some of the young guys. You put out the top 50 report. I recommend this to everybody that's a Tigers fan, because even if you want to focus on the major league guys, these are guys that are coming. Some of them are already on the spring training roster, McGonigal, Clark, guys like that. But I like that you went with a nice round number, Raj. I know I got obsessed with the number last year. You went with 50, but I noticed there's maybe more than 50.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that in camp too, where for example, it's just like the names that are coming up, like John Peck, that are not the household names. Like everybody talks about McGonigal, he made the cover of Baseball America, but seeing Tyron Lorenzo losing 35 pounds, and then the story that comes out kind of confirms what we're talking about, his struggles, and goes out and hits a home run today. But then, Kelly Salcedo, there's other names. I mean, they're not obviously they're not out in spring training yet, but there's so many depth pieces out there that are coming out to make their. Even Tyler Madison today made a scoreless seventh inning. So I think that the Tigers, as much as we talk about how much they're top heavy, I still think there's some names in here that will get more familiar with Tiger fans as the season goes along.
Well, tell us about some of those names, Raj, because I heard about Peck. I actually read about him before the interview, so he does seem to be somebody that's catching people's eyes. So let's start with him and maybe some other guys, because we covered McGonigal in the last interview, and Clark and some of those guys, because they're the most talked about guys. You guys are very good at uncovering kind of the depth of the Tigers organization. So what have you seen so far, whether it's just kind of leading up to spring training or in camp, where guys have caught your eye like Peck has?
The thing about John Peck is that, and Chris did a really good job with the scouting report, but this is something I noticed in the playoffs last year in Erie. first and foremost, he stands out because he's a right-handed hitter, and that stands out because the Tigers are so left-handed heavy, and sometimes his swing can be a little long. He does struggle a little bit with kind of the advanced off-speed breaking stuff, but when he does make contact, he makes really good contact, and his arm is solid. It really, what stood out to me last year was when they called up Trey Cruz at Toledo. That made, when John Peck got called up, at first I was thinking to myself, like, well, this is going to be a challenge for him, and he did pretty well, all things considering, and he showed a better range at a faster level, and he was able to adapt pretty well, holding down the left side of the infield. And I think his arm is above average. His defense is really good, and I think that he makes good baseball instincts plays. I mean, in terms of like going home to first, he's a guy that I really think that the reason why he's turning heads right now is because he does all the little things well, and like I said, even the reason why I think he wasn't drafted was because we always look at Cape Cod League numbers, the wooden bat leagues. That's the first time foray into it. And that's why his drop stock went down a little bit. But another guy I think that we talked about him a little bit too is Eduardo Valencia, who had a single today off a tough pitch. Valencia is a guy who I think is going to make some more noise as time goes on. He is another reason why he stands out. He's right-handed, but he's also a guy who a lot of Tiger fans, a lot of prospects, like Troy Melton, talking to Troy Melton last year, he was like, tell everybody sleep on Valencia, and I think it's true. And he has the ability to just needs to work a little bit defensively on his first base side of things, but catching wise. But I think Valencia is another story that is going to continue to get better as the season goes along.
I see you've got a player spotlight of him dating back to last August here. So be sure to check that out at Tigers Minor League Report.com. But that's what's cool about what you guys do. There's a lot of up and coming players, and you get to see the future a little bit. And like you said, you've been able to scout some of these guys. And one of the things, we brought this up from the pro level in the last interview, I know people are clamoring for a bat at the major league level, and they wanted to sign somebody. They wanted to pursue Bregman last year and this year. They wanted somebody on the left side of the major league roster that can provide another consistent bat. But I would think, I know we're talking about some pretty deep pieces in this pack and some of the other ones, but then also the surface level guys like McGonigal. He's a left side piece that's going to have to come up at some point in time and is making his way to the major leagues. I have to think that some of the guys that they're watching, because obviously they watch their own system more than any other system, and they know better than anybody who's coming up. I have to think the lack of aggression is at least somewhat attributable, could be because of salaries and not finding the right fit, not finding the right culture fit. But I got to think part of it is attributable to, hey, we need to make room for some of these guys that are coming, and we have more faith in them, whether it's Colt Keith, as we talked about last interview, maybe doing a little bit better this year and holding that down better, or McGonigal or some of these other guys coming up. We have more faith in what we have coming, and we don't want to mess up the apple cart too much.
Yeah, and I think when we talked to Ryan Garco a few weeks ago, that was the sentiment we got from them. They really believe in what they have. And if you look at the way they've done the evaluation of guys like, I think of like a guy, for example, like Lucas Ellisell, who had a really good year last year as a pitcher down in Lakeland, who started gaining velocity a little bit. There's a belief in their system because they're putting things in place that the Tigers haven't done before. And I know this sounds like it shouldn't be revolutionary to some, but for people that growing up in this area and just growing up and watching baseball as a whole, when you watch other systems develop talent, meanwhile you have 5 players, you can put them off the top of your head, that have been held by the Tigers in the last 30 years, that's kind of a tale of things that needed to change, period. And so I think this is the reason why they're so ingrained into what they want to do, because they've been seeing results from it, and we haven't seen results from it as a fan. And you can go back to, like I said, I've said this before, numerous drafts. I mean, the 75, you were talking about a draft spell between 74 and 77, some of the best drafts Tigers have ever done, historically speaking, baseball-wise, too. You have two Hall of Fame, well, three if you want to put in Lou Whitaker, Hall of Famers there, and the likes we'll never see probably again. And I'm not saying these draft classes are Hall of Fames, but these are strong draft classes that you're seeing 14, 15 players from their farm system actually contributing to on the big league level.
Exactly. And I do think that part of the reason they're hanging on to these guys and not being more aggressive in the trade deadline last year and seeing some openings at the major league level this year, I have to imagine that's preparing for that. I almost think they're in, you'd be a good one to ask this because I've talked about this the last couple baseball interviews, but I almost think they're getting to the point where they are almost have too much of a log jam at the minor league level because of how well they've done at acquiring talent. It's like, okay, obviously it's a system, the way the Major League Baseball is built, it's a system where you only have so much headroom. You have the major leagues that blocks everybody else in the minor leagues, and then you've got to slot those guys in by position at the appropriate minor league level, wherever they slot and fit best. And it almost feels like they're getting to a point where I was not big on the idea of, hey, let's package a lot of the big time guys together and get a big name at the trade deadline last year. I was almost looking at it as the opposite of saying, well, hey, a few of these guys are kind of blocked a little bit and maybe free up some room in the minor leagues because they've been very good at identifying talent. And I would imagine they would fill that talent in. And if you can consolidate a couple pieces and not make a huge move, but consolidate some pieces and have that guy fill one of those top roster spots at the majors, then you might be reallocating your assets in a positive way.
Yeah, and the one thing that is, you bring up a good point about the fact that the abundance of infielders right now. You have Max Anderson, you have Lee. We're seeing a lot of them in camp early on, and I think that, you've seen Lee at third, you've seen Anderson at second, and then they've interchanged, and then you have Ace Young playing first base. They have to do something with that because, I think that I'm sure with Ace Young's swing changes, we saw the mechanics. He doesn't hold the bat the way he used to. But you see Lee struggling defensively at third where he struggles to make the throw. So that's where it's like, okay, you got to pause and go, okay, well, now technically you have 3 second basemen. Both Young and all 3 of them can play second base adequately well. Anderson still needs more of a sample size at third base. So it's like the question is, what team out there is going to be interested in something like that? And so that's where you have to see what would fit back, what would the Tigers want in return. And I think right now what the Tigers would like to see possibly is, based off some of the arms we've seen so far they've signed, maybe a pitcher in return. But there is a logjam there. They have to address it because I think that, a month from now, there might be a team out there that might need a infielder, but the question is, what will the Tigers want in return? But I think they really need to, because it's just, you can't keep, if McGonigal heads north, fine, that makes room for somebody else, but at the same point, development-wise, like Max Anderson, what is he going to be? Is he going to be an outfielder? Is he going to be a second baseman? We'll see. But the Tigers have many. It's a luxury. It's a good luxury for once, actually.
Exactly. It's a good problem to have, but one worth discussing. We're going to take a quick break, but I want to come back with that and talk about some of those pieces that you mentioned, because one of them is the reason I thought of this, actually. So we'll come back with Rogelio Castillo of the Tigers Minor League Report. Stick with us. You're listening to the Sports Project Primetime on Jethro FM. Having a good conversation about maybe some of the guys that we might see as the season goes on, some of the names you haven't heard as much. And I want to talk about this middle tier a little bit, Raj, that I view as kind of the middle tier. We talked about some of these guys that are kind of on the come up and maybe some names that are aggregating a little bit more and you're seeing a little bit more. And then we talked about the high end guys that everybody's talking about in spring training, but these middle ground guys, Jace Young is the one that made me think of this, because he was a guy that was accelerating through the system. He was a big prospect. He was probably a guy that would have been able to be traded at one point in time for some decent assets, either as part of a package or as an individual. And not that he's not valuable now, but because there hasn't been the right opportunities for him, he hasn't always had the best fit within the Tigers organization and maybe gotten the best spotlight, because that's what a lot of this is too, is being able to showcase a guy and then another team maybe doesn't fit at your major league level. But to your point, Raj, they say, okay, well, we want some pitching depth, some younger pitchers to be able to replace some of these guys as they age out. And so we want to put those in the system where we need some more arms and trade a guy that way. But it feels like they're trying to shuffle guys around to give them enough of a showcase, which isn't ideal, but is ideal from the standpoint of, hey, we have all these assets that we need to showcase.
Yeah, and that's a good way to put it, because I think that when you look at him playing first base, it does seem a little. I try not to say it does feel, I want to say forced, but it is kind of forced. I mean, they're looking at the way that they build a roster has always been on position versatility, and they're going to do that no matter what. And so I think with in Young's case too, we've heard that possibly they were trying to ask around and see what the market was for him, and maybe there wasn't market for him. So that being said, I think going down to Toledo, and we saw this he did an article, Tony Paul talked about it with him, it fired him up a little bit, and he worked his ass off to get back to where he's at. And I think what's going to happen here is that the Tigers are going to I think he's forcing the Tigers' hand a little bit, and the same thing with Hyu Lee. Now, Hyu Lee and Max Anderson are kind of in the same boat too, so when are you going to put one of them in the outfield? Or are we waiting for the great outfield experiment to begin? That is another question we're going to see here in spring training. And I think that as the World Baseball Classic kicks off, I believe next week, we're going to start seeing more And I love this part of spring training, the experimentation, because you don't get a chance to see it very often.
What are you looking forward to seeing? Are there certain experiments that you want to have at some point in this year's spring training? And I want to mention again, I mentioned this in the last interview, but if we were to make a bingo card for my baseball segments, Hyu Lee would be right in the middle. It would be the middle square because it's the most likely name to be mentioned. I think we have the most Hyu Lee name drops per interview in the history of sports radio. I'd just like to point that out. That's mainly thanks to you, Raj, and your crew, but it's everybody that I bring on, we get a lot of Hyu Lee references, and I think people think that he's like that I'm like buddies with him or have him as a family member or something, because it's great. But no, those are guys that we do need to see, and I'm curious what you're kind of anxious to see in that experimentation phase.
One of them is Ty Madden. And Ty Madden, now mind you, he's not a prospect anymore, but what we saw today was really encouraging. We saw him against 3 premium Philly bats, and he held his own. And I'm curious to see where the Tigers are going to put him, because we get the news today that Troy Melton has some arse soreness. Are you just let Ty Madden go loose in the bullpen? Because that's an experiment to me that I think is worth looking into, because while the Tigers' bullpen is really good this year, they reinforced it pretty well. Ty Madden comes in there now, and here's a curious case. So you have Montero. You still don't know what you have from sort of Gibson Long. So where does Madden fit in all this? And so I think, him starting out, maybe possibly put him into your 8th or 9th starter, because you need to go now 10 to 11 deep now these days, it seems like. And so, but then it's also like, well, maybe Madden put him back there just in case something happens where Best is not effective enough or something like that. So I love to see how they're going to use Ty Madden. That's one experiment. The other experiment is, I think it's intriguing to me as far as from an outfield perspective, is where you have, and I give credit to Cody Saberhagen at Athletic who brought this up, Tigers have 6 or 7 outfielders. How are you going to fit all that in there? And, Jahmai Jones is going to get some more reps in the outfield. The question is, how is he able to handle it? He's a guy who can hit left-handed pitching. Great. Awesome. But can he go play the field on a regular basis? That's another one I'm looking forward to seeing, because the Tigers need, if Riley Green is going to take advantage of this awesome strike zone. We saw 3 walks today. Ryan, we saw history today. And with the ABS there, I think this is going to be a good opportunity to see Riley Green continue to play more in the outfield, or excuse me, whatever his role is going to be. But at the same time, how's that going to benefit the Tigers? Simple. That gives them more at bats, possibly to put them in a DH situation. But you have to make sure your outfield can play at Comerica Park on a regular basis and with confidence. And so we know Parker Meadows is fine. Is Kerry Carpenter's hamstring going to hold up? So Jones, to me, is somewhat vital to this situation as well.
I agree. Great points. We're talking with Rogelio Castillo of the Tigers Minor League Report, and these are great points about the outfield as a whole and the team as a whole. Because one thing that they're clearly trying to do, again, we're pointing out good problems to have where you've got some depth in the outfield. Because think of what was happening last year. Jahmai Jones was a bit of a revelation last year when they weren't even sure which 3 they were going to put out there. They had to have the Javi Baez experiment. They had to kind of force Jones along, and he was a fortunate find. And this year, it's nice to have that depth because there's going to be some attrition, but I do think that the key is going to be able to get some guys more rest and kind of size them to the roles that they need. Baez back to more of a utility role. McKinstry in a utility role where he has that positional flexibility that got him to the All-Star game. And then you have those other outfielders where, hopefully you don't have to play Carpenter too much so you're not pushing him physically in that outfield when you do have some athletic outfielders like Meadows that you can put out there, and hopefully he can stay healthy because there are a decent amount of health questions with those outfielders. So hopefully that depth will be a good thing, and the fact that they can reinforce that will mean that fresher legs down the stretch, because that's one of the reasons. There's a lot of reasons that things happen, like the downturn at the end of last year, but I do think that guys were fairly worn out. I know it's an up and down game, but the pitching staff especially, and then even some of the hitters, I think they were stretched a little thin with what they were asked to do throughout the season, whereas I think they reinforced the depth this year so that they don't have to do that as much this season, health pending, of course.
Yeah, and that's where you're seeing like the Corey Dukes of the world and Austin Slater getting those early at bats, and so that of course you're going to expect them to start the season in Toledo, but at some point you might see them at some point in Detroit. So it's good to see Dukes, who had a RBI single today, and he had that home run, I believe, in the first game. So it's just, you're right. But what I find interesting the most about Carpenter is with hamstrings is. And we've seen this time and time again. Hamstrings don't seem like the type of injury that it never gets 100%. It always lingers, and so you're hoping that the offseason gave him enough time for that, because essentially I've seen it compared to like shredded turkey or something like that, some weird thing with it. And so I hope that if Carpenter's healthy, this offense is completely different. It's an offense that can give you a chance to win the American League. And you're absolutely right. You saw it kind of drag towards the end. In that game against Seattle, which was the extra inning game was so brutal, because it just seemed like the Tigers were just running on fumes at that point. And I don't think the Tigers want to make that same mistake again this year.
Exactly. They were just basically one more healthy pitcher essentially away, and hitter too, but kind of focused on the pitching. I've been burying Tommy Canely today here, Raj. So it's just continuing that. I actually kind of liked him for the most part last year, but he just was what he was. He was limited, and I think he was forced into more high leverage situations than he should have been. And that was kind of the case with a lot of the players, where they were probably forced into action more than their bodies or their minds or their pitch variability could kind of take. So I think that's I think that is something that they're focused on this year, both from what they've done to reinforce the major league level and all of that stockpile at the minor league level that you guys cover so well. And I want to make sure to give you a chance to cover that and make sure to tell people where to go, because it's great stuff and you can tell how knowledgeable they are there. We're going to have Chris Brown and others, Raj's partner, there on my show all throughout the season because they literally do see the future. They're like the crystal ball. They have the crystal ball of the Tigers here. So make sure to tell people where they can follow you guys.
Well, thanks. And we're going to be heading down to the spring breakout game up in next month. So you can find us at TigersMLReport.com. You can find us on Twitter at TigersMLReport. And we also have a Patreon, Tigers ML Report. And so we're doing newsletters. We're doing a lot more videos this year. And we look forward to we cover all, not just the minor leagues, we do the major leagues too. And we look forward to, I think, a really good season coming up.
And Chris will be on my show, Sports Intel, after you guys come back. So we'll kind of follow up on a lot of the points that we talked about on the show here, and we'll have Raj on the show throughout the season as well. But thanks for joining us, and we really appreciate all the information, and we'll look forward to following the coverage during this great year that you predicted.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Raj. Appreciate Rogelio Castillo coming on. If you don't want to say that, then you can just say Raj, which is what we called him when he came on the air here. But yeah, Rogelio Castillo, Chris Brown, Joe was actually part of that outfit, Tigers Minor League Report. But they have a lot of, Jerry McKinnon is great there. They have a lot of great writers and a lot of great information there. So be sure to follow them.
Really good stuff.
Yeah, that was good stuff. We carried a lot of baseball here, Jeff. So we're an hour and 50 minutes in. We're going to take a break. It's going to be just Jeff and I, and we're going to, you got to decide for me, Jeff, if we're going to do 10 more minutes of baseball, if we're going to talk about other stuff. So we'll have the break to talk about it. But stick with us. You're listening to the Sports Project Primetime on Jethro FM. Want to make sure to thank our sponsors that made it possible: Jeff Blonick Group and 5 Star Realty, the WMU Broncos Athletics, Hope College Athletics, Dinks and Dingers Sport and Social Club. Jeff and I are going to talk about them in a minute. Best Side Bar and Grill Golf Simulators, Athletico Physical Therapy, and KC Event Center. We thank all of them. Want to give a few shout outs too, including to the fans of Valley Field, the Brick Campaign and Donor Wall fundraiser. That's fansofvalleyfield.org. Terry Lowery had a great segment earlier about Bob Sullivan, and I learned something about him from my executive producer on my show, my mom. She was part of the West Michigan Sports Commission, has been for a very long time, and Bob Sullivan was one of the original members of the West Michigan Sports Commission too. He needed another thing to do, Jeff.
Another title. Right?
Amazing guy. I'm glad we were able to talk about him. We've got the Grand Rapids Rise home Thursday, February 26th, tomorrow at 7 p.m. Go to that. If you don't go to that, listen to the show with me and Shane Graham. We had Winning Wednesday, so they're at the game right now, but Josh Crumbach and crew won the Winning Wednesday deal here with the Griffins, so they're attending the game. I didn't check on that one. Jeff and I were checking the Pistons Pistons game in the break here. The Grand Rapids Sports Hall of Fame, GRSHOF.com. They're taking nominations, so check that out. Westside Christian School is having an auction dinner February 27 at the Gypsum Event Center. You got Jill Nienhuis at 616-291-0819 to contact for more information, or WSCauction@gmail.com. The last shout out I have is for Dinks and Dingers. They're doing the Major League Wiffle Ball Tournament, which admittedly, Jeff, I didn't know was a thing before we talked about it about an hour ago, but it's February 28th. It's this weekend, and I hear we're going to have a couple celebrities from Jethro representing for our sponsor, Dinks and Dingers, and you, Jeff Isaac, are one of them.
Yeah, Steve did invite me out for the tournament Saturday, so I will be there. I know Steve is the public address announcer. He's going to be doing that. And whether I get to talk, I don't know. I just want to go and watch this because just a couple years ago, my son got into watching those YouTube videos of these guys that literally travel throughout the Midwest doing this. And it is incredible and fun to watch. So excited for Saturday, absolutely.
It makes sense to me that they have a major league wiffle ball. I just didn't know about it. I mean, they have professional, I don't know what you call it at the professional level. Is it bags? Is it cornhole?
Cornhole,
Is
yes.
it, okay.
Yep.
So that's become a professional sport. These guys playing that are incredible. The wiffle ball has to be like that, where it's like, okay, I think people go, oh, wiffle ball, that's what I played in my backyard and we goofed around with my cousins and brothers and sisters or whatever. No, this has got to be some serious action. It's got to be fun to watch.
If you get a chance, check it out on YouTube to watch these pictures and what they can do with that wiffle ball. There's just no way. I mean, I grew up playing wiffle ball in the backyard, and we just hours and hours until the sun went down. I don't think I could hit one pitch from what these guys do with this ball. It's the Bugs Bunny, what they do with that ball is absolutely insane, and it's really fun to watch.
I'm excited. I might even be able to catch it. I might try to go down there and catch you guys there because that's a neat event that they're doing. It's a good place, cool place. We were talking about it in advance, or one of the sponsors on the show. We're talking about it in one of the breaks here because it's positioned right there on the belt line, right by where Jeff and I work. But they've got a nice combination. I think there's some focus because pickleball is so prominent in general. I think there's a focus there. They probably get the reputation of, oh, okay, this is a pickleball place, but it's dinks and dingers. It's both, and they have the ability to host these kinds of events, which is cool. And they look like they have good food too, Jeff.
Yeah, the food looks great. It is 5080 Broadmoor Avenue Southeast. The tournament's kicks off 9 a.m., goes till 7 p.m. Stop by anytime. It's free. Admission is free. You can come down and watch. It's going to be a blast.
Yeah, they have a lot of different events there that I've heard about, and it's worth checking out in general. Cool place. We're getting a lot of pickleball places and a lot of sport places here in town, which is great because obviously we like to focus on sports here on the show. So be sure to check that out. I'm hoping you guys both get to talk down there. You could do like a little play-by-play and analysis. I want you guys in the booth together. You need to be like Jason Benetti and Andy Dirks. I could see you being the Dirks.
Well, whether we even have a booth will just be interesting. So, it'll be fun. Like I said, whether I get to talk or just listen to Steve, I am there to watch because it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Well, I've noticed from some of the pictures of the place, they have like those cargo containers in there. So I'm envisioning your booth being in one of those. Sure. And then you have like a little window, and then you can open the window and the ball can fly back there. And then you guys are in there. And I want you guys to be more like Benetti and Dirks than Mario and Rod. I don't want you guys fighting over a chair in the storage container.
Right. Yep. We need to go viral for that, right?
It'd be good pub for Jethro anyway. But speaking of Jethro, be sure to tune in to the rest of the lineup here for the next sports show up is mine tomorrow with Shane Graham. We got a good lineup coming up for that, 7 to 9 tomorrow night. Shane Graham's Extra Points with me, Ryan Walsh. Be sure to tune in to the daytime shows as well because I forget to hit them sometimes, but you got Conrad, and I think he's got a guest filling in there. And then
Matt Monroe's in tomorrow, and actually the rest of the weekend next week, Matt Monroe will be in studio. Yep.
So we'll catch him on the Country Bunker, and then you've got Rowdy Yates filling in for that afternoon slot, 2 to 7. And then weekend, you've got the Sports Project again. As far as I know, the sports professor will be back, and he'll be doing it. You won't have substitute teacher vibes for that one, 10 to 12 on Saturday. Then you got some polka pops in between. Make sure to listen to that. Then we have a friendly face and voice there after that on Saturday.
Yeah. Yep. Check it out. 7 to midnight. All requests Saturday night. We have a blast. Make sure to tune in for that. Absolutely.
Definitely. Catch him more there. He does great. He does it all. He does the sports. He does the country stuff. I don't do the country stuff. I can't fill in for you on that, Jeff. Well, I'll stick to the sports, just like I'm not going to do the ice skating here. But but then you've got Sports Intel on Monday if you want to catch more of me from 7 to 9, and then tune into us on the Sports Project next week from 7 to 9 with the sports professor back in town. But thanks for listening, and have a great night.
The Sports Project.